So I will save this.
So we don't add longitude to this one?
We're getting there.
Okay.
We're getting there.
Right click here.
So
File, save it.
once it's saved and we've given it a new file name, select your entire model. So I select my entire model, copy and paste it within the same model window, like Control C, Control V. Is that what it's saying? Holy shnikes, look at that. Whoops. I managed to mess this up. It's great, that's great.
Do we need to select all of the like arrows and
Everything.
variance terms as well? Or
Yeah, I just draw a box around everything.
Oh, that's a smart way to do it.
And so you wind up with your model twice. Notice that everything that is copied, the software is smart enough to say, well, we need to give this a different name. So all it does is it adds an apostrophe to the pre-existing name. And it does that even for the manifest variable. But we don't have a manifest variable G2L2 apostrophe. So what you actually need to do is copy those back in. What you should wind up with, and this is a little weird, but you should wind up with two versions of the exact same thing. So 1.16, 1.16, 165.91, 165.91. But are those two models constrained to be the same at all right now? No. But you also don't have them running off of two different groups. So it's like, with all of the data in the model, how's this estimating it? And how's that estimating it? But they're exactly the same model, so you wouldn't expect them to be different. So this just means that we're doing the right thing. So far, so good. So the variables in the copy part of the model have been appended with an apostrophe. Remove the apostrophe for the observed variables. The model should now be providing the exact same estimates for both parts of the model. So we are on track. Right-click each observed variable and select Add Grouping. This sounds important. So right-click, Add Grouping. Right-click, Add Grouping.
On both models.
On both models. Of course, what you see is that it adds a little diamond to the corner. That's its way of telling you this variable is being run for a group. Now, what you don't know, and Onyx frankly isn't good at telling you, is what variable is that group based on? Well, right now it's nothing. All you've said is add grouping, but you haven't said what variable is defining the grouping and what value defines the group for that variable. So we're not done yet. But this is a critical step because now we're going to start to push these two models apart. Yes?
Wait, which thing were we supposed to take out? What's your shot?
You need these two sets of variables to be exactly the same. So when you first copied it over, one of them is going to have an apostrophe after it.
So the arrow terms on the pattern terms having apostrophes is
That's good. Yeah. Okay, so drag your grouping variable onto that little diamond. So let's use this lunch variable and watch what happens here. It's a special moment. I don't want you to miss it. So you have to have keen trackpad or mousing skills because you got to get it right on the diamond. Oh, look at that. Look at that. It turned from empty, white, to full, black. That tells you that it's actually grouping on something. Now, it doesn't really tell you what it's grouping on, but it tells you that it's grouping on something. You got to know. So then you go, well, let's do that for all of them. All of them are going to be grouping on lunch. Don't accidentally drop it into the manifest variable. You'll be disappointed. Although I hear there's an undo command. Boom. Did you see everything get re-estimated when you dropped it in the last one? Why? Why did it re-estimate?
did it estimate assuming that purple is 1? And then the other one it wasn't, like, did it pick 1 because it's
It did pick one. And in fact, it's telling us which one it picked.
Oh, 0.
Right.
Oh, so that's sort of right.
Yes, you are sort of right. I'll take it. So what it did is once you dropped it in that last one, it was like, oh, use this variable, group 0. So it changed from being a model that ran on everything to a model that ran for just group 0 on that lunch variable. So we are definitely making progress. This is super. For each variable, select the group variable you wish to model. What I mean by that is, come on. Why isn't it showing up?
Group 0.
Oh, group up at the top. Sorry. Yes, here. I feel like it used to be further down, but maybe I'm just looking up. So what you're doing now is you're going to say, well, for one of these models, we want the group to be 1. In other words, the value. So you got it.
You can just right click on the manifest variable.
Yeah. But I'm having problems.
Oh, it switched the last one on.
So the 0 and 1 comes from the data itself. In other words, my variable, my lunch variable, is coded as 0 and 1. If you had something coded 1, 2, which is a terrible idea, but if you did have something coded as 1, 2, it would be, group 1 and group 2. So that's just coming from the data. If you have a group 3 in that data set, that is being left out of this model entirely. Now, this goes back to what I kind of previewed before, which is right now, these two models are being run totally independent of each other. It's as if you had one data set with the zeros and a different data set with the ones, and you only ran that CFA model for one and the other. You would get the exact same values as what you see here, because they are completely separate from each other. There are no constraints. That makes this an important model, one that we may want to compare to. Sorry, markers. Any guesses on the values that we want to record here? What would you guess?
Degrees of freedom.
We need some degrees of freedom.
And -2 likelihood.
Chi-squared or -2 log likelihood. One of those two. This is just like the other stuff that we did. So let's record some values. And degrees of freedom. Oh. It's so confusing how it gives you the other one, but we don't have CBA.
Bless you.
Okay. So now we can start to stitch these models together and see if, wait, if we stitch it together, is this fit, is the model fit going to get better or worse? If we start to stitch these models together, in other words, make them more similar, is the fit going to get better or worse?
Worse.
Worse. The question is not, will making the models the same between these two groups, between those who receive and don't receive free and reduced price lunch? The question isn't, well, does it fit worse? The question is, does it fit statistically worse? Have you degraded the model so much that it's not worth the degrees of freedom? Or put a little bit differently, you're letting one CFA model fit itself as best as it can to the lunch group, and you're letting a different CFA model fit as best as it can to the non-lunch group. So when you make those models the same, is it worse than what you would expect? Yes?
You have both restricted degrees of freedom equals 78, and then lower you have degrees of freedom independent 28.
Yes, and this is probably just the two version difference
Okay.
thing.
Does it matter that mine is not 28? 26?
I have 26 too.
Okay.
I have 28.
28.
Just